Hey there. My name is Lauri Jarvilehto. I'm CEO and co-founder of Lightneer, a learning game company. We started about 2 years ago together with Lauri Konttori, Peter Westerbacka, and Niklas Head. And the reason we started the company was that we wanted to address the challenge of whether we could actually create learning games that would be as much fun to play as the best games in the world. Now, the title for this talk is The Hidden Potential in Learning Games. And what I would want to do in the next 15 to 20 minutes is to raise out perspectives as to, actually, let me ask you guys a question. How many of you guys are actually involved in game design or development? Raise your hand. Awesome. So what I would want to raise are some perspectives into thinking why I think all of you guys who are developing new games should consider seriously why learning matters in games. Now, there are a couple of reasons why this is so. But before I go into the actual points, I want to give you an example of what a great learning game looks like. Now, I think overall there's a kind of a sentiment about learning games that they're sort of boring and, they're sort of, not really great games. And I think in the sort of like the little niche that is the learning game industry in the world, it is a kind of a sort of idea that people have that since we're doing something that's kind of like beneficial for the player, it doesn't have to be that amazing because it's good for you. So I'll give you two examples. First, I'll give you an example of a game that is not a learning game. For example, a game like flashcards with your friend, Mr. Koala. Now, if you think about, you go to the App Store and you look at the educational category, and unfortunately, I need to say that most of the stuff that you find in that category is just like crap. And the reason is that if you create a game like flashcards with your friend, Mr. Koala, which is, by the way, a completely imaginary title for a game, but I think it kind of reflects of where I'm coming from. You take something as boring and tedious as flashcards, and you slap something as sort of like contrived as Mr. Koala, whatever that is, on top of the flashcards. So, what do you get? You get boring with contrived. And what you don't get, mind you, is learning. So the example, this just struck me about a little less than a week ago, that I think one of the best examples out there in the world of a really, really well executed learning game is a game that I play personally a lot right now, which is kind of a good thing and kind of a bad thing, but it's a really amazing game called Clash Royale. Has anybody played this amazing learning game? Just raise your hand if you have. This guy plays with two hats, so that's... Clash Royale. How come is it a learning game? Oh, here's why. Last week I was in Rome with my 8-year-old son, and he's even more into Clash Royale than I am. I'm not that good at it. I've been stuck at around 2,000 trophies for ages. And then we're there, sitting in a cafe, and my 8-year-old son starts giving me strategic tips about how to kill the other guy's king tower. And for the first time in my life, I got to 2,100 trophies. Let that sink in for a moment. I'm almost at Frozen Peaks. I don't know how many of you guys have got the Frozen Peaks already. Just raise your hand if you have. One guy. Oh my, I thought that I'm so behind everybody else. So what's going on there is that actually my son, an 8-year-old kid, has been playing this game that, that many parents think is mindless waste of time, but at the end of the day, this guy has learned a ton of ideas about strategic thinking by playing a game. Why? Because at the end of the day, the way you learn is when you put in the hours to learn, and when you learn, and the way you learn is if you care about what you're learning about. And oh boy, right now, when I was traveling with my kid, every morning he starts with a 15-minute lecture about the next strategies in Clash Royale. So Dad, listen to this. If you take the knight and you couple it with bats, that doesn't work perfectly. But if you have minion horde on top of the knight, that's really hard to beat unless the guy has fireball. And then I'm like, okay, tell me more. I want to get those 2,100 trophies. And my kid has been learning all of these things, and it has actually contributed to his way of strategic thinking, even though that game wasn't intended as a learning game. Now, why should we care about learning games? And now I'm talking about games that have been intended as a learning game. Obviously, there are other examples that are even more to the point about how a game that wasn't intended as educational became educational. Anybody play Civilization ever? Raise your hand. You know, how much did you learn about history in the history class? And how much did you learn from Sid Meier? I mean, most of my history knowledge actually comes from this comic book called Asterix. And that's not a joke. So we learn when we put in the hours. We put in the hours when we care. And that's why this flashcard Mr. Koala thing doesn't work. This whole idea that because we are doing something useful, something that's good for you, so it can be boring. But if it's boring, nobody's going to play the game. If nobody's going to play the game, nobody's going to learn anything. So a great learning game needs to be a great game, period. And there are a ton of great games out there that actually already teach you a ton of amazing things. But the reason why I would want to challenge you guys with the idea that learning games matter is that we have a huge challenge in the world that I think us as gamers and us as game designers can solve. Namely, right now, we are in a point in time and in history where we've learned to be too good at entertaining ourselves. We've learned to create all these amazing retention loops and all these amazing, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Netflix did this thing recently where about 3 months ago, where when you stop an episode of, let's say, Daredevil, 4 seconds after the music starts, it starts loading the next episode, and you have about 2 more seconds to click watch credits, or otherwise Daredevil episode 7 is going to be in front of you. Anybody notice this? So what's going on there? Well, Reed Hastings and his team have been hard at work with the analytics, and they figured out that, hey, if we shove the next episode in front of these people, they're going to start watching that, and that's going to give us more binge watchers, which is going to give us more engagement figures, which is going to give us more happy users who are going to recommend this to their friends, and that's going to give us amazing K factor, and that's going to give us amazing user base, and our business is going to be thriving. And you bet, it's thriving. And they're creating amazing content, and they're creating more and more clever ways of getting us to spend time with that content. The same is going on with Netflix, is going on with games, is going on with a ton of different kinds of entertainment industries. We are amazing at customized entertainment that's available 24/7, that's available right now in every single one of your pockets. If I'm too boring, you can start watching the Daredevil episode 7 right now. At least if you have something like AirPods that doesn't show too well, in your ears. And then these kids go to school. These kids who grow up, it's not just kids who have ADHD. We all have ADHD right now. Because we all have these little red balls. How many times did you check your cell phone? How many of you guys are checking the cell phone right now as we speak? Wally, what are you doing? Oh, you're tweeting. Okay, that's okay. Tweeting is that's exempt. We're amazing at this stuff, and at the same time, these kids go to school, and then you have somebody talk for 45 minutes about something like, the history of Rome, when Romulus and Remus came to this place, and then they fought it out because they were these twins who had mother issues. And we have what I call the attention gap, a huge gap between the level of attention we need for learning that's growing more and more, because the kids who we'd want to be sitting in the school are actually out there chasing Pokemon. Or they're drumming the table for 45 minutes and just hoping that the teacher would just cut it out so that you can go out and chase those Pokemon. So what can we do? And I think we have the keys in our hands, us as game developers, us as gamers. We can actually bridge the attention gap. by tapping into those very same mechanisms and very same tools and the very same ways of working that have given us this challenge to begin with. By using games, by using the same gameplay mechanisms that engage people to games like Clash Royale or Angry Birds or whatever, these mechanisms can be put to use in learning. And the answer is actually relatively simple. We discovered this already a couple of years ago. You have to create, not, take something like a school book and gamify it. I mean, if somebody says gamification anywhere ever, just run for your lives. It's not about gamification, it's about great game design. And if, Civilization is a great example. You take something like history because you have somebody like Sid Meier who is really passionate about that, and you make a great game out of that. Boom, and people learn history. And when we started Lightneer, we wanted to start with some easy topics, so we chose particle physics. And we teamed up with those people who love particle physics, aka the physicists at CERN in Geneva, who are like either going to solve all the mysteries in the world or create a mini black hole that's going to destroy the whole planet. We don't quite know which one it's going to be, but But anyway, these guys really care about what they're doing, so that has to come. And then you make a game about that passion, about physics. And then what happens is, when you have that creative fire in that, and when you have that, when the team is, totally on fire when they're creating that amazing piece of work, and you bring it to people, whether they're kids, whether they're adults, they start playing, they go, all right, and just one more round, I got to give you the spin. And then all of a sudden, we've been doing playtesting in dozens of schools in Singapore and Hong Kong and Slovakia and Argentina and Finland and Uganda. And everywhere we go, it's always the same. These kids, their eyes light up. And then when you ask them, how many quarks do you need to build a proton? How many of you guys know how many quarks you need to build a proton? There's 2 hands. And every single kid knows the answer. Once again, because they're doing something that they care, they're putting in the hours, they're getting the information they learn. So that's why this matters. But one of the points that I wanted to share with you guys is not just a question of that, that it's a really amazing challenge to, upgrade the human race, which I think it is. But it's also that there's a massive potential for games, not just as a kind of an ethical challenge, but also, as a business. And right now, if you take a look at how learning games are positioned in the world, how many of you guys have lived through the sort of finished version of mobile game revolution? Since the year 2000 to the year 2010, raise your hand if you've seen that in terms of events. In 2000, there was this Samuli Syvähuoko started this company called Fat Hammer, mobile games, and he was like, mobile games are the future, and I was like, dude, seriously? Mobile games are the snake. It's nice, and I always play it when I'm on the can, but you can't find a company around this idea. And then Nokia came, and the guys who made the snake, and they went man, let's make this gaming phone, that you can, it's kind of like a Nintendo, but a phone. And when you put it, the problem is when you put it in your ear, you look like Dumbo. But that doesn't really matter because it's a gaming phone, and all the 3 people who bought that phone on the planet really enjoyed playing it for all that 5 minutes until they got a phone call and they put it in their ear and everybody cracked up around and they realized that shit, I look like Dumbo. And this was, kind of like trial and error, trying to figure out this lay of the land, but there were these passionate pioneers out there who felt like there's something going on here, something amazing. Someone's going to come down and crack the code, and at some point it's going to be amazing. And then in 2007, another sad Finnish story. The phone that Anssi Vanjoki said that's never going to, make a difference anywhere, and that's definitely not going to change the market leader position of Nokia. Change the market leader position of Nokia. And then a year later, App Store came, and then a year later, Angry Birds. And all of a sudden, this whole niche sort of seriously? Dude, mobile games, you look like a Dumbo, and 1 billion people are playing Angry Birds, and you have cut the rope, you have dozens of amazing titles out there, and then comes Supercell, and boom, all of a sudden, gaming is a larger industry than movies. And who would have thought? Who seriously would have thought, apart from these 2 crazy people, who would have thought 10 years ago that gaming is going to be larger. Gaming that us as nerds used to love and care about and grow up with, but everybody else thought that we were like just idiots because we loved that. 10 years ago, who would have thought that it's going to be bigger than movies? And right now, learning games are in exactly the same position. They are niche. Most of the learning games are as much crap as mobile games were in 2005. There are about flashcards with Mr. Koala and all of that. But at the same time, we have a huge opportunity in the world. We have the second largest market on the planet, $5 trillion for somebody who cracks the code. And not just because it's a business opportunity, but because if you crack the code, you're able to close the attention gap, and you're going to be able to solve the problem that tens of millions of teachers are struggling with every day right now in the world. So how's that for a win-win proposition? And we are close. Now, I'm not saying that we, as Lightneer, as a specific company, we have an amazing product in the works. We're seeing some pretty amazing indicators that it's going to be transformative once we go global next year. We'll see. But you guys all know how fickle gaming is as an industry. And that's why what matters is not just what a single company does. What matters is that at the end of the day, every single great game out there is already a learning game. You can't make a great game without making a learning game. And that's a fact. Angry Birds. How many of you guys know what happens when you tap on the blue bird? Raise your hand. Come on. Blue bird. You must know the answer. You guys just scored A on that one. How many of you guys know what happens if Pekka fights with a wizard? My son would know. My son actually asked one of the Supercell guys about this, and he had to scratch his head more than my son. But he's a living Clash Royale encyclopedia. That's all learning. And what I'm saying is that, we care about dragons, or we care about knights in shiny armor, and we care about birds, and we care about a ton of different kinds of things. And you walk down that corridor and you see a ton of amazing concepts that people care about. And there's also a ton of concepts that we can use to leverage this attention gap that have to do with physics or history or mathematics or whatever, that there are a gazillion of people out there who care about them. And if we start creating games around not a topic to be taught in the school, not a school book, not a flashcard, but around that love for that topic, we're going to see an amazing wave pass through the world. So I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to stop. This is by far the thing that I'm most proud about, what we're building right now with Lightneer. 2 years ago, I visited Cambodia, met with their Minister of Education. We had this crazy idea that, right now, the Western countries are going through this, what in Finland they call the digiloikka, the digital leap. And, some crazy politicians got it in their heads that once we get iPads to every school, the whole learning thing is going to be so amazing, and digital is going to change everything, and books are so old-fashioned, and let's just get iPads everywhere, and then they got iPads everywhere, and then a year ago we were at one of the high schools in Vantaa, and the teacher came to me a little quietly like, Lauri, do you think you'd have use for 300 iPads? Digital is nothing. Learning is not about digital. It's not about the tools. It's about the content, and it's about caring for that content. So 2 years ago in Cambodia, we had this crazy idea that there are these rural schools where kids don't have anything. They don't have even school books. They don't have even teachers who would have gone to the teacher school. They're just basically sitting there and writing down in their booklets whatever the person who's the quote-unquote teacher happens to write on whiteboard. That's learning in Cambodia. That's learning in Uganda for millions of kids around this planet. So then we started brainstorming a little, like, hey, but I mean, these games seem to be doing kind of a cool stuff. Like, there are, like I said, most of the learning games out there are crap, but there are some actually really amazing learning games like Dragon Box and Fun English and so forth that teach algebra and English and Grow Your Garden, which is like as a logic game, enticing for even somebody geezer like me. So how about if you went to these rural schools that have nothing, and you preloaded these like super cheap tablets with the best learning games on the planet, and you just gave them to the kids and saw what happens. So then back then, like people were like, that's a great idea, but did you know that these guys don't have electricity? And literally 15 minutes after talking with a round table of principals and education ministry people in Cambodia, we had a solution: solar panels. And we had the whole thing laid out. And now we started deploying this. Now we have 2 partnership schools in Cambodia, 2 partnership schools in Uganda. This is one of them we visited in June. And one of the most magical moments that I've ever seen, if we think about the attention gap, we think about the fact that how do we get from this point where kids are like not interested to the point where they love to learn. And we have this bunch of kids, this whole like bamboo classroom filled with 40 kids who have never seen an iPad, never seen an iPhone, never seen a computer in their lives. 11-year-old kids, they've never seen any of these technologies. So these crazy geezers come in these like, green hoodies there and like, hey, we came from Finland and we have these tablets, so you guys want to try them out? And they go like, huh? And then we hand them out, no instruction, because the whole point of this project is to see how these guys actually work with these devices. We gave them out to these guys, and literally 90 seconds, and I have a video on my phone, I can show it to you guys if you want to come see it afterwards. That's shot 90 seconds after these guys got the tablets. No instructions. The only thing we did is we preloaded Big Bang Legends on the tablets so that they could get started with that. And it took these kids 90 seconds to figure out the game and start learning. And we are at the brink of a learning revolution. The whole educational system in the Western world is changing as we speak. The educational potential in developing countries is even bigger. If we don't change fast enough, these guys are going to overtake us. There's great science fiction literature about how Africa is going to be the biggest economical system. Having visited these guys, I think it's a real possibility out there. But what's most exciting is that we have the key to this puzzle. Us right here, game designers, game developers, by combining the love for a topic to learn, like we love dragons and birds and whatever, and making not just like, gamified whatever, but by making great games. Games that entice, games that engage, games that pull you in again and again and again. And we're going to see millions of kids learn on this planet.